Vance's donors, past work, investments, and the personal beliefs he admits to out loud make it clear. Vance is using the working class narrative as a way to enrich himself and the powerful people supporting him, all at the cost of the people he says he's helping, like you.
And then finally, I'm not going to spend as much time on this as I had initially thought. Send us a message at tvlr.fm/contact if you have any recommendations for a JD Vance expert. I would like to interview somebody about JD Vance and labor. But he was selected as the VP candidate for Trump on that ticket. And so a lot of stuff has been kind of resurfacing. A lot of the really weird stuff is gender politics, hates, childless people, and, just really kind of a lot of bizarre stuff. But more materially on the labor front, he's got a lot of stuff that people just don't know, that we want to just kind of reiterate really quickly. We've talked about it in the past, but it's worth going over again. He was very prominently a backer of a railroad safety bill in the U.S. Senate, and so that got a lot of fair and a lot of media attention and even some praise from unions. And what did not get as much attention was that he backtracked on measures of his own bill that would have imposed penalties for corporations that ignore the law. He also amended his bill to allow the same unsafe tank cars that leaked chemicals in East Palestine, Ohio, to continue circulating through U.S. cities until as late as 2028, just as rail and chemical lobbies asked. This amendment has happened a long time ago. It happened last year. But that amendment came in the wake of nearly $2 million spent by Norfolk Southern on D.C. lobbying post-East Palestine. And it also came in the wake of the company that manufactured the toxic chemicals that were released and incinerated in the wake of East Palestine, Ohio, giving $2 million to the primary Senate GOP super PAC as bipartisan rail safety legislation stalled in Congress. So not only was it amended, it was weakened at the behest of these lobbyists as they give millions and millions of dollars to Republicans. Then they didn't even let it through even after those amendments. The original Railway Safety Act directed the Transportation Secretary to expand the definition of high-hazard flammable trains and issue regulations for wayside defect detectors, devices placed along tracks that catch technical problems. It also required a minimum of 2 crew members on most freight trains and increased the maximum fines that the Department of Transportation can impose for safety violations, among other provisions. And another amendment that passed stripped requirements that the Department of Transportation issue rules for hazmat trains to reduce or eliminate blocked crossings and issue rules limiting train length and weight, weakening the requirement for wayside defect detectors and more. So, a lot of this stuff, a lot of the stuff that he got a lot of praise for, he has been quietly chipping away at after it was introduced, or him personally chipping away at it and him allowing it to be chipped away at. And this is just one thing. There's a More Perfect Union has a really good video on JD Vance. I wanted to play a couple of clips. This is some about how JD Vance kind of got his start. Let's play this clip from More Perfect Union.
It's a story of comically evil billionaires, the people responsible for the opioid epidemic, and even killer robots. For my next collaboration with the classroom team at More Perfect Union, make sure to subscribe to them too, we looked into what side JD Vance is actually on. The working class world he came from, or the elite Silicon Valley billionaire world he moved up into.
The elites in the ruling class of this country are robbing us blind.
Vance's donors, past work, investments, and the personal beliefs he admits to out loud make it clear. Vance is using the working class narrative as a way to enrich himself and the powerful people supporting him, all at the cost of the people he says he's helping, like you.
And then they went and talked about some of the some of his relationship to Peter Thiel, who is one of those kind of comic book villain characters that he talked about there. Let's listen to the relationship between JD Vance and Peter Thiel.
And Thiel is still taking care of JD. He was an early supporter of Vance's Senate campaign, pouring millions of dollars into a pro-Vance super PAC before Vance even announced his campaign. In fact, Teal has donated more to Vance than anyone has ever donated to a single Senate race. Yep, you heard that right. Teal has spent more money trying to get this guy elected than anyone has ever spent on a single candidate. Why would Teal, a man who made his billions in tech and was on the board of Facebook until February, want this guy in office?
It's time to stop complaining about big tech. It's time to start writing them strong letters, and it's time to start doing something about it.
And it's not just Teal donating to Vance. Vance's top donor list looks like a guest list for a union-busting seminar at Davos. The job title among Vance's donors that donated the most total money isn't nurse or construction worker, it's CEO, which is concerning because I thought I heard someone say,
the elites in the ruling class of this country are robbing us blind.
But really, why would America's elites support someone who claims to be fighting against America's elites?
Hey, 5 seconds, just wanted to say that this is only possible because of our donors. If you want to see more of this, then consider donating yourself at tvlr.fm/donate.
It's a good question. Brian Tyler Cohen in that video for More Perfect Union talks about some of the ways that Vance, uses this pro-working class rhetoric and then but then partners with the very people that are the originators of the problems that he's identifying to try to find quote-unquote solutions that are friendly to business. Some other stuff that, we've talked about in the past, there was a strike threat at Kroger in his state, where thousands of Kroger workers were negotiating a contract that they voted down 3 times, and it was looking like they were going to strike. I think ultimately they were able to get a contract and ratified it, but they voted it down 3 times, and so it was looking like they were going to a strike, and reporters were asking him, would you go to the picket line if Kroger workers struck? And he refused to answer it. He refused to comment on it, which, because he actually does not care. And Kroger workers are not the kind of workers he cares about. If he can be seen on a picket line with a big, bulky white guy in a hard hat, he would like to do that, but he's not going to do it for, just service workers. He doesn't think they're important enough. He doesn't think they're cool enough. He doesn't think they give him enough kind of prestige, because he doesn't think that just supporting working people is the right thing to do. He only wants to do it if it looks good for him, if it'll help him in some way. And then finally, there was this recent article from Lever News, which is David Sirota's new project. They've got a lot of good stuff going on over there. The title of the piece is JD Vance Fought Health Protections for Steelworkers and Their Communities. The author is Gray Morin. And he says that the EPA was pushing forward some new regulations in coke plants. And they uncovered, Lever News did, a November 2023 letter where Vance urged the EPA to abandon those new regulations designed to limit life-shortening toxins spewed from coke plants, which are part of the steel industry supply chain. These chemicals, like benzene, mercury, lead, and arsenic, harm workers in nearby communities by heightening the risk of cancers, inflammatory lung diseases, and other health conditions. In his letter, he said, quote, I strongly urge the EPA to abandon the proposed rule to prevent unnecessary harm to domestic coke production and U.S. steel production, which is a critical economic driver of the American economic recovery. If implemented, the proposed rule will reduce coke production in the U.S. at a time when domestic steel production is more important than ever. The EPA, however, asserted that the proposed rules would likely not adversely affect in a material way the economy, a sector of the economy, or productivity. In fact, the agency's economic analysis of the rule found the total annual cost of the updates to be small compared to the total revenue of each firm. For instance, the analysis predicted it would cost Sun Coke Energy, which operates throughout the Midwest, less than 0.5% of its total annual revenue to update and meet these requirements. And that's in 1 year, right? I mean, you do these updates once and then they're done. And we're talking about 0.5% of the annual revenue for 1 year. After Vance's intervention and subsequent other lobbying efforts, the new standards, which were finalized in May, became weaker than the long-sought protections the EPA first proposed. Vance's Senate office did not respond to Lever News to a request for comment. And so, that's like, just again, another way that he's not fighting for workers. I do have to say though, and Lever News included this, and so I did read this, and it would be dishonest of me not to include it, I think, because this is something that he would probably hide behind if he were ever cornered on it. It is worth noting that the United Steelworkers, which is the union representing workers throughout the steel supply chain, including at coke oven plants, has also pushed back against the rule. This coming from Donnie Blatt, director of United Steelworkers District 1, in a press release supporting Sherrod Brown's call for the EPA to revise their new rules. Sherrod Brown was also part of the fight against the EPA on this, unfortunately. Donnie Blatt said, quote, "The USW has a long history in fighting to reduce hazardous air pollution in our atmosphere. But the proposed amendments would result in significant costs and jeopardize good-paying jobs in local economies throughout the U.S. The EPA should further consider revising these amendments responsibly to allow U.S. steel companies to compete globally and still achieve their desired goals." Which is effing bonkers. Really...
Real pitiful work there.
Yeah, just real crazy stuff from... I don't know.
Hey, our bosses said they might lose 0.5% of their annual revenue.
Lordy.
Please don't do that to them.
Yeah, geez. Being reduced to a lobbying arm for management. That's kind of gross. But the EPA did not respond to a request for comment about why it weakened its proposed standards. The agency's economic analysis of the proposed rule determined that fenceline monitoring of benzene, which tracks pollutant levels surrounding the perimeter of a plant, would annually cost about $116,000 per facility, a fraction of the profits of the multi-billion-dollar U.S. steel industry, the fourth largest producer of steel in the world. Of the 6 companies that operate coke ovens in the country, the EPA notes that 4 are publicly traded companies that reported revenue in 2021 greater than $1 billion. So there you go. JD Vance, not exactly a working class warrior. So there you go.
Yeah, it turns out you have to look deeper than just flannel shirts and pickup trucks and country music. There may be a little bit more to class in America than all that.
Might be. Just might be.
You just saw a clip from the Valley Labor Report. We are live every Saturday morning from 9:30 a.m. till 12:30 p.m. And we pride ourselves on keeping all of our content free to everybody so that we can talk to as many working folks as possible. If you support the work that we're doing, you think that it's important, you think that it's good, then consider making a monthly contribution to the project. And you can do that on our website, tvlr.fm.